Hello and welcome to a very exciting video of the year. It is finally going to be my top 10 of 2021. Yes, I love seeing at the end of the year what people actually really loved from their reading year. Last year for me it was kind of hard because I was reading quite a lot. I mean, not last year, 2 years ago. In 2020 it was like a little hard for me to choose my top 10 because I feel like there's only a few really good reads and then like everything else was a little bit filler. But I think I could confidently say I have like 10 things and even more than that I could like talk about. I actually forgot I was going to do an honorable mentions list, so I think I'm going to make it a tradition. I think I did it last year too, but I'm going to have 5 honorable mentions and then we're going to get into my top 10. So let's start with the honorable mentions. I'm starting off the video very weirdly because I didn't even finish this book. I have like 100 pages left, but I read most of it in 2021 and it would be really weird if I included it in my top 2022 reads because I mean I basically did read the book this year, and that is Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. This is a book you might have been seeing me read throughout the year. I've talked about it sometimes. It's been a journey with this book. I still haven't finished it because I just haven't found the time. I usually get more invested in my current reads rather than like this. I know that I'm gonna be heartbroken. I know I'm gonna miss this story so much, but I truly can call this like one of my favorite books. Like it would be in my top 10 probably if I had actually finished it. But instead it's an honorable mention. Next honorable mention is Six Crimson Cranes by Elizabeth Lim. This was a really fun, light fantasy and I'm really excited to read the duology, to read the sequel. I like the storytelling nature of it. It feels like a fairy tale. It's just a very fresh YA fantasy. The next spot for an honorable mention is Saga. The entire series, like I read all of it in 2021. Definitely the last 3 volumes are my favorite. I think it's just such a ride of a story. I love the characters and their relationships, but I also like the plot as well. Like not kind of, I really like the plot and I like how it's told and like we have different people. There isn't just like one side to what's going on. The next honorable mention is The Jasmine Throne by Tasha Shuri. I just feel like once I reread this book, I'm gonna really love it more, but I already love it on its own. It's a political fantasy, political high fantasy at that. It follows 3 main women. Very like empowering in that way. Finally, the last honorable mention is Darling by Kay Ancrum. This is probably my favorite thriller at the moment. It just had me shocked the entire time. I literally couldn't put it down. I read it in one sitting because I was too anxious to like not know what was happening. Like that's how effective of a thriller it is to me. It was just so well written that I couldn't put it down. Let's get into it. So I did actually rank my reads this year because I saw everybody else was doing it and I was like, how are you guys doing this? Like last year I didn't do it because there was like no way. I could not choose a favorite book of the year, but I did it. I did it this year, kind of. I did like a cop-out way, so you'll see when I get there. But these books are ranked from the ones I loved the most, the least, to the ones I love the most, if you get what I'm saying. So let's get into my number 10 spot, which is Plain Bad Heroines by Emily F. Danforth. So this is the best lesbian book, in case you weren't aware. It's a gothic horror and it's a tome of a novel, but it has a very unique narration, very complex, interesting characters, and even a very interesting plot that will keep you wrapped up the entire time. Is it a slow burn of a story? Yes. Is it huge? Yes. But is it worth it? Yes. So basically, we have 2 timelines. First, we have modern day, where all of these women are a part of this production of this murder that happened once upon a time at this one academy. And in that we kind of see like the Hollywood life, the struggles that each of these women are going through, and kind of these like little really weird off things that are happening in these women's lives ever since they started being a part of this project. Then the alternate timeline, or the other timeline I should say, is seeing these murders happen at the beginning of the book and then the after effects. Like, it isn't about the actual murder itself, because we kind of see the details of that story revealed in the modern day timeline. What we see instead is how this affected the headmaster and her associate afterwards, because it had huge repercussions, and it gets really crazy. It's just about like these people spiraling, and like generally like everyone just spirals and like can't handle the pressures of everything that's going on to them. There's like this really weird Twilight Zone element of like these bees, or they're not bees, I forgot what they were, but they kept I remember that part of the book, like they kept insisting they weren't bees, but there's like these like bee-like things that would pop up, and it would be like this really tense moment. Like, if you could imagine it in a movie, there would be like this kind of sound, and there would just be this bee, and then the main character, or the perspective character, would just look at it and be super confused, scared, mad, whatever, and then like suddenly someone would enter the scene and they would snap out of it, and it would just like, it was like nothing happened. And I was like, what is going on? Like, what just happened? Did we just get transported into the Twilight Zone? Like, what's happening here? You know? So it's just like really weird things like that. It also has a very unique narration, as I said. She wrote it to be in the perspective of like a gothic narrator from our classic stories, and she wanted it to feel like a story you would read by the fireplace, and it's just super eerie and dark like that. Like, I'm sure if I read The Woman in White, I feel like it would have the same narration as this, because that's what it was inspired by. The audiobook is amazing too. She does very good acting, or whoever the narrator is, they do very good acting for all of the characters, and even the narrator themselves gets their own voice instead of it just being the person themselves. They kind of put on a character to tell this story. It's a whole vibe. It's really good. And the audiobook itself, it's going to help you get through this tome of a book even faster. Next, I actually didn't expect for this book to go on my list because, I don't know, I just picked it up randomly. I was planning on reading it eventually, but not so soon. And then I saw it in a used bookstore for a really good price, and I was like, I'm gonna cop it. And I read it, and it was like a whole experience. It changed my life forever. And I'm like only half joking. The book is none other than My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell, and I am waiting for the day this author writes another book. This is a very dark book. This is about Vanessa, who she basically is living her life kind of day by day. She's just your average woman, and then suddenly someone that went to her old school is charging one of the teachers for assault, and she wants Vanessa to come forward with her own story, because Vanessa pursued a relationship with this teacher when she went there back in like 2000. We see two timelines again. We have modern day timeline where she's kind of trying to just live her life, get away from this woman who's trying to like make her come forward with a story that she doesn't even want to tell because she doesn't think of herself as a victim. And then we go back into the past where we see this relationship grow, and then kind of what she's experiencing during it. I would say it's really dark because it does go into very dark details about like multiple what would you call them, like interactions between the two of them. It was I was gonna look up what the guy's name was, but I don't care. I do not care. You know, she doesn't know that she's a victim because she was groomed, and it's just really sad. But this has very, very, very beautiful writing. And I did read this book in a day. I know a lot of people say they have to put this down, and I did put this down, but I was just so anxious reading it that like I had to know what happened. So I picked it up again, and I finished it in 24 hours. That was a freaking day, and the weeks following that, I was like depressed. It was really bad. Next, it's a book that has way more positive vibes, okay? We're gonna put the positive vibes out there because my number 8 spot is Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. This is the first book in the Wayfarer series. Yes, I was gonna say Wayward Children, but that's something else. This is a light sci-fi novel. Well, okay, it's not light sci-fi because I mean we're literally in space in a rocket ship on like a space adventure, but in a way it's more about the characters because it's a character-driven novel than it is about the plot, which a space opera usually is. So we have this girl, if I remember her correctly, I think her name was Rosemary. She joined the Wayfarer crew, and very soon they get recruited for the biggest job that they've ever had, and so they have to travel across the galaxy, across wars, to get to their new job. And so this book is about the journey there, but not really. Like I said, it's a character-driven novel, so through each chapter, which ends up becoming just like very random days on their journey, we get to learn about each of the members of the Wayfarer crew. And oh my god, I love this book. I laughed, I cried, I smiled, I got angry. Like, there were so many emotions that I was halfway through the book and I was like, this is a 5-star read. Like, very few books have been able to make me feel so many emotions in like half of a book's length. Like, I was laughing every page, I was smiling every page, and those were mainly the emotions I was portraying. And like, I'm not the type of person to read books that make me happy because I like darker, more grittier stuff, but it was just such a fresh breath of air of a book. Like, I was so happy reading it. And I loved the characters. The way that I was able to care about them within just like one chapter was amazing. And I love the format of this. Like I said, it's like random days on their journey, and it's like slice of life basically, and getting to learn about the characters through these different adventures that they have on this one journey is a super interesting way of doing character development and backstory. I've never seen it done before, and I still haven't read about something like that. Like, I think Becky Chambers did something really unique here that I'm kind of glad that no one's tried to recreate. It's just kind of, it makes it its own, you know? It makes it its own story. You know, all-time favorites, it's one of my all-time favorites. It's a comfort read, and you should read it because it is a comfort read. Thank you very much. The next two spots are kind of interchangeable depending on my mood, but my number 6 and 7 spot ended up being series. Right now, the number 7 spot goes to the Plated Prisoner series. This is a King Midas retelling, but like a very unique King Midas retelling. We have our main character Orin, who is a woman of gold turned by King Midas, and she is kept locked away in the castle by the man himself, and she's not mad about it, she's not upset, she's actually thriving a little bit. She has these pieces of emotion sometimes, but for the most part she loves Midas, she loves what she has, and she respects the position that has been granted to her. But then suddenly Midas breaks her trust in him with like one decision, which is just crazy to think about how like this all started with like one thing. When I think about like what happened in the books, I'm like, oh my god. Orin starts questioning her relationship that she has with Midas, and that kicks off like a bunch of stuff for the book. If you read the book, you'll see that the plot is like fine, but you don't really read the books for the plot, you read them for the characters. The characters are amazing. There's like a bunch of like background stuff that's happening, and you might skip through those chapters. I speed read through those chapters. There you go. Because I was only here for my girl Orin and her character development. Like, this series blew my mind. Like, I read it, I swear to God, I read it in a week and a half because I was so invested with Orin and everyone else, but specifically her. Like, it's just such a good series. And I don't like the word guilty pleasure, but like technically this is like a guilty pleasure, a guilty pleasure read for me because it's not everybody's cup of tea. It has a lot of dark themes, a lot of weird dark scenes, and book 3 delivers. Book 3 is a whole freaking setup, and we set up to book 3. That's what I should say. We're setting up to book 3, and book 3 gives us forced proximity with every single fucking character that we've met in this entire series. Like, it is so good. I swear to God, I have never read a more perfect book with a more perfect plot. Like, I give that book 4.5 stars for what? Like, I should have just given it 5 stars. Honestly, after this video, I think I'm gonna give it 5 stars because it delivered on everything that I've ever probably wanted in a book. Oh my god, is that a rose on the rose bush? And then, of course, we have the number 6 spot, which is a series that is long overdue for a reread. Honestly, all of these books, most of these books, overdue for rereads. It is The Themis Files by Sylvain Neuvel, which I think is actually how you say his name. I was pretty sure I've said his name wrong, like, a lot, but it's okay, because I'm saying it right now, probably. The Themis Files is a sci-fi series, and it is the first, I think probably some of the first sci-fi books I read. It was revolutionary. Like, it quite literally changed my reading for the rest of the year. The Themis Files is about, I don't know what it's about. It's about this girl who falls into a hole, and in this hole is a metal giant, and it's super weird. But 20 years later, we see that she started a research team to find more pieces to this metal giant, because it's just a hand, and she knows that there's more. And it's such a good series. It's emotional. The drama delivers. Like, I was halfway through this book really interested in the science of it all, because Novello puts a lot of science into his books, which I really love about him as an author. But then suddenly the drama kicks up. Like, people are trying to kill each other on this team, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, where did this come from? The relationships are fantastic. Obviously, we have a found family situation here, which I always love. And the progression of this series is absolutely insane. We have a lot of themes about the ethics of, like, what they're doing and, like, human morals and what they do to, like, affect the decisions we make, because a lot of members on this team have very different morals, and girl, stuff gets crazy. Like, book 1, book 3, oh, they're like totally different. Like, we're in totally timelines. I'm just like, it got so crazy so quickly. But the morals were, I mean, the themes about morals and ethics were so good. And I don't know, I love this series. I love the audiobooks. They are the best audiobooks I've ever listened to in my entire life. Like, to this date, they are the best audiobooks, because the books are told in interview format, and so the audiobooks have a full cast, of course, but the full cast doesn't just, like, conveniently come in at some times. The full cast reads every single line that their character has. And it just feels like you're listening to a really amazing story. And I loved it so much. Also, Waking Gods will break your heart. You will cry like a little baby. I promise you. My number 5 spot is actually a book I forget I read sometimes, and I'll think about it again, and I'll be like, I will never be the same person I was before I read this book. It is The Beautiful Ones by SMG. Earlier today, I was thinking about how I didn't have a favorite author, and I was so sad about it. Like, I forgot about my own girl. I forgot about Sylvia Brenda Garcia, and I'm so sorry, girl. I'm so sorry. The Beautiful Ones is a historical fantasy. It is the best historical fantasy you will ever read. No, I'm just kidding. It's more of a, it's a historical fantasy, but it's more of a historical romance with fantastical elements. Our main character is Nina, and she's ready to kind of find a partner, to find a match. She's definitely a romance gal. I love that about her. Hector, she meets Hector. This man is perfect in every way, especially to Nina, and she falls fast, except we find out, oh my god, the drama. Hector is actually back in town, and now that he's back, he wants to see his old love that he almost married, and then, like, it was a whole messy situation, but he's back to, like, he's really excited to see her, and he finds the opportunity through Nina, because guess who his love is? His love is Nina's cousin-in-law or something like that. I don't know, but they're, like, related by family, and so he's basically using Nina to get to her, but Nina's falling hard for him, and then, of course, it's a romance, and, like, oh my god, the pain. Part 1, this book is set in 2 parts, and part one was so upsetting to read. Like, I was crying and I was so angry. For, like, someone who has the freaking audacity, I really loved him in part 1, because we mainly get his perspective in part 1 and, like, everything that's going on with his story, and so it was just interesting to see him doing, like, these really terrible things, but, like, very redeemable, like a very redeemable character, and I love him. And then, of course, we get more of Nina in part 2, and I just kind of liked seeing her grow and just become, like, an even better, more fuller person than she already was. Like, I love this, and of course the writing is beautiful. It's one of the main reasons SMG is, like, my favorite author. Like, she just writes the most beautiful books and the most beautiful worlds and the most beautiful characters, and this book, of course, is not an exception with this beautiful cover. I love this book so much. In my number 4 spot is A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. Like, I literally was betting my life that this was going to be in my number 1 spot at the end of the year, but here she is at number 4. Anyways, you've probably heard of this book. Everybody loves it. I've only seen a couple of people not like it, which is fine. Definitely not a book for everyone, and I'm surprised that actually everybody loves it. Like, I know people have a tendency to look past things they don't like in a book for beautiful writing, but I didn't know that they were going to do that with this book. It's a novella. It is a reimagining of Dracula's Brides, which is not really the part I don't care about, which is the part I really don't care about because like I don't really know anything about Dracula's Brides. Our main character is Constanza, and she gets revived once upon a time by this vampire on the brink of death. And in this book we see her retelling their story in letter format, kind of like a letter to him. It's told in second person, and we see this relationship that they have as more people join, even just at the beginning when they were alone, and like the habits that they grew with. It's a very upsetting book. I chose violence for my top 10. Let me tell you, I chose violence because there's nothing I like more than a book that will emotionally damage me. It's just a very beautiful, lyrical, upsetting, emotional toll of a book. This last part is like what makes the book. Like, it is such a satisfying conclusion to this like destruction of a novel, and I think it's a very interesting, beautiful way to talk about toxic relationships and like codependency and stuff like that. And once again, it just has another very beautiful cover, and it's very short, so I highly recommend this one as well. Number 3 is Down Comes the Night by Alison Saft. This is the winter book to end all winter books. It is so good. It's a young adult fantasy, gothic fantasy, more so like gothic in the way it's like atmospheric. We're in a mansion. Let me tell you all about this book if you haven't heard of it yet. But first, let me show it off. Hey, I got sent a signed book plate, which I'm super happy because I love this book so much. So Down Comes the Night is about Ren, who is a healer in like a magical nurse type of way, and she gets fired from being a soldier, and she's just like so depressed about it. But then she gets sent a letter from Mr. Lord Lowry, and she decides to pursue him in his asking of if she will come to this kingdom of his, cross the borders basically, and like come to his mansion and heal somebody in his household, which it was like his servant or something like that, that's like severely sick, because he's heard of her magical abilities, and nobody from his kingdom, from his like area, has magic, and so with reputation and with the lack of magic, he wants her to come. And so Miss Wren is like super depressed. She wants to prove herself to the queen. She accepts and she goes, and at this mansion is a big surprise, a very big surprise for her. I'm not going to tell you what, because honestly, in my opinion, the plot description, don't read the summary of this book because it reveals way too much, but it's pretty dramatic. It's pretty dramatic. It's pretty good. I don't know. This book itself, gorgeous. There's like embossing in the cover that I'm pretty sure you're not going to be able to see, but it matches the beauty within. Again, we have beautiful writing. Main thing about this one is the atmosphere. It's just such a perfect winter book because of all the snow. There's like a snowed in element to this novel of her being trapped. Oh yeah, the reason I love this book so much too is because it has all my favorite tropes. Like literally, I probably still would love this book, but I probably wouldn't love it as much had it not had like every single one of my favorite tropes. I love both of these books equally, but because of the other one that I read, it's more fresh in my mind, and so it got the #1 spot. The book in my #2 spot, it's Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse. My toxic trait is thinking every book I read is going to be my favorite book of the year. Black Sun is basically one of the best adult fantasies that you will ever read in your entire life. So let me get crisscrossed because my back is tired. But this is a adult high fantasy set in a pre-Indigenous or pre-Columbian world where we follow a bunch of different characters on their on the days leading up to Convergence Day, which is basically the super religious event, and it's a eclipse essentially. But in our first kind of story that's going on, we have Shiala, who is a captain of sorts. She's a pirate captain, and she gets recruited by Lord Balam to take this certain person to the capital city of Tova in like 9 days time. She finds out that the person on cargo is Serapio, who is this other very scary terrifying individual. We go to the capital city and we follow Narampa, who is the Sun Priest, and she's basically trying to reform this whole political institution that they have of like the priest, because they're starting to become like gods themselves, and she doesn't think that there's the relationship between her or between them and their citizens anymore. So she's trying to revamp that, but then of course there's political intrigue, there's plots, people are trying to assassinate her, people are trying to get her fired or like taken out of her position. Like there's a whole lot of political drama, and it's super interesting. People, oh my god, unpopular opinion, people don't like Narampa or her chapters. Maybe I'm just a little biased because Iktan is the love of my life, but her stuff is like really interesting, and I really love her as a character, and I really love the plot that's going on with her. I don't understand why. I don't understand the Nara slander, okay? I don't understand the Nara slander. Get off of my girl. She's doing her best. She doesn't need any more of your disrespect, honestly. It feels like a very big setup to the rest of the series, but I do kind of love first books like that because I love world building and I love establishing who characters are, so it's something that I really enjoy. You might not enjoy it though, but I do. Finally, we arrived to my #1 spot. I am tired, but I am ready to talk about this book because it is highly underrated. Like nobody's reading it, and I'm so upset because I need fan art, but no one's reading the book. And it is The Mask of Mirrors by Emma Carrick, the best adult fantasy of the year. Because like technically, this book came out 2020, so I'm just saying, no, I'm lying. Actually, like from everything that I read, it technically is my favorite adult fantasy from 2021, published in 2021. But this is a historical fantasy, and it is about Ren, who is like a street rat. I described it the same way. I'm going to describe it the same way I did in my December wrap-up, but she's a street rat, and she is tired of doing these like little cons to get money and like stay alive basically. So she decides that she's gonna go big, and she's gonna con her way into one of the houses, the House Trimentis, so that she can finally become her full potential of herself. Like she could be rich, she could be bougie, she could be living life perfectly, but of course with a plot so eccentric, nothing goes right, and she gets wrapped up in like so much more than she expected it to. Like, oh my god, the progression of this story is crazy. And there's a point of the book where like stuff just hits the fan. Like it just gets like insane after something happens to someone. It goes downhill from there. Oh my god, this book is so good. Like 600 pages, and it did not feel like it. It felt like 200 pages. I was reading this book, not wanting it to end, and I was so happy that I had all the time in the world finally to read a book like this. Like I was so invested. I was annotating. I was being happy. I was happy. So happy reading this book, because I don't know. I have not felt passion towards a book in so long. I was having a really bad second half of the reading year, not because of the quantity of books I was reading, but because of the quality of the books I was reading. Like nothing was hitting me hard. And then I read this, and it changed everything. And I can assure you that my reading is doing perfectly fine now. And I promise that it's because of this book. Oh god, I just love the drama. I love the high society. The magic is interesting. Do I understand it? No, but I still think it's interesting and very unique. I love the characters. I've said this before and I'll say it again. Let me just, hold on. Lesbians for Vargo, I swear to god. I found fan art of him. Oh my god, fan art of Vargo popped up on my timeline, and I screamed. I almost screamed, actually. I didn't, because I was at school and I was freaking out because I was just with my friends chilling out, and then suddenly I'm on Twitter and I'm like, just scrolling, bam, Vargo fan art. I wanted to cry. I was so happy. I love that man so much. Can you see how excited I am right now? I love that man. That sounded like a very important, it was not an important notification at all. Anyways, that was those were my top 10 of 2021. Like, it was a pretty good reading year. It was a pretty good reading year, I'd admit. And that second half, downhill, but like the first half, thank you so much for watching. And I will catch you in the next video. Have a happy reading year. Bye!